Thank you. So my name is S.K Nyamu. I am the CEO and the team leader at Komarock Modern HealthCare. Beyond that, I have specialized in obstetrics and gynecology, that is reproductive health, which is what I do most of the time. I mean, if I'm here in the office for 13 hours, I will spend like 12 hours actually seeing patients, basically ladies who are pregnant and who have other issues that are gynecological related. Of course, I still do a bit of, overseeing the hospital, but otherwise, most of the time I spend seeing clients, and that's my passion, and that's what I want to do more than just doing the management bit. Now, Komarock Modern HealthCare started in the year 2004 when I was still doing my internship in Kenyatta National Hospital. So I met one of the lecturers in Kenyatta along the corridors, and who was actually my lecturer, and introduced me to another lecturer who was actually lecturing pharmacy. And since someone has a pharmacy in Komarock and would want to have someone who can, and do some prescription, in the dispensing room. And that lecturer was called Dr. Ngoshi. He is late, a very good friend of mine. He had a pharmacy called Destina. And so one day I went to Komarock, found Mr. Ngoshi, and he gave me a room. That room didn't have anything apart from a table. And we agreed with Ngoshi that I would be paying him 100 shillings per day. So I bought a chair, a very small one, because the room was very small. I would not be able to go to my seat when the client is seated. So you want to stand up first so that I'm able to go and sit down. So I had to buy a seat that was, it was possible to fold that seat so that the client would fold so that I get my way to my seat. Now, of course, I had the stethoscope that I had in school, which I used to see patients. I would prescribe medication, and since there was a pharmacy there, then the pharmacy would, the clients would get the medications from the pharmacy. There was a gentleman called Ibrahim also, who had a small lab within there. So my work was just doing consultations, and also if there's an injection, I would get medications there and do the injection. So I would pay 100 shillings per day. That was a lot of money. So the first day I started in the clinic, I made 300 shillings. And of course gave out the 100 shillings, so I was left with 200 shillings. The second day I didn't make any money. The third day I made 900 shillings and gave out 100 shillings, and I was left with 800 shillings. The fourth day I made 1,200. And that is how Komarock Modern started. I was not intending to give it the one Komarock Modern. It was that coincidence that the lecturer who was having the pharmacy coincidentally had a pharmacy in Komarock. Now, because I was still doing my internship in Kenyatta, I would come from Kenyatta Hospital at around 6 or 5, start seeing patients up to around 9 p.m. There's a huge Somali community in Komarock, and that way, that formed a big number of my clients. Now, one time, of course, I would see patients. Sometimes my intention would be to leave the clinic at 9, but sometimes I would leave the clinic at 1 a.m. because the number went up. But one day, I found a Somali gentleman who had fought with a sister, and of course hurt his hand, and decided he would not have anybody to stitch him until I come. So I came. The incident was around 12 midday. That gentleman waited for me up to around 6 in the evening. So I came and did the stitching. But then I felt that may not be very safe to the patient. So I got my first employee, that time called Chris, a nurse, whom I would leave there in case of something like that. And I would be able to call him and convince the patient that you can still be sorted out by that other person. So that was my first client. that was my first staff. I'm still looking for him. Of course, he left the institution. I know he's doing well wherever he is. I'm still looking for him. Now, after that, of course, because my office was within the pharmacy premises, and I didn't own the pharmacy, so it was very difficult for the owner of the pharmacy to close the pharmacy, because then sometimes I'm almost going to once morning. Because the number went up, the number of patients went up, so sometimes it's going almost to once morning. So one day he requested that, I think you need to get a space, because sometimes you are not able to close the premises, in good faith. And so just next to Komarock, there was a gentleman, there was a building there which was being renovated, which I talked to the owner. The owner actually was a pastor. I talked to him and he gave me the building. That building and a consultation room, a pharmacy, a laboratory, and 6 beds. So I started with 6 beds. There were 3 other beds which I would now use as a maternity. So basically the maternity unit started with 3 beds and a delivery unit. Now, of course, again, the number was very high. That is how I started naming the hospital now from that time. Initially, it was actually called Destina Clinic, because the pharmacy was called Destina. But now, since I was no longer at Destina, then I had to change the name to Komarock Modern. Now, I stayed there for some time, but again, because of the growing number, I was not able to stay beyond there. So one evening, a friend of mine called Gishana, who was actually a client, called me one of the evenings and said, my son is unwell. The son is called Ian. And then I said, well, bring him over. He said, no, I have moved to South B. I said, why did you move to South B? Then he said, no, we felt it's near town than Komarock. He said, then give me the house. I can buy the house. He said, no, we are not selling the house. So I said, since you are not in Komarock, then I actually over the phone prescribed medications for Ian, because Ian some sore throat. Ian was the son. So after that, like 10-15 minutes later, Mr. Ishana called me and said, Mom, the wife, overhand has discussed that issue, and he said, if it's Nyamu who wants to buy the house, even if we are not selling, we can decide to sell the house to him. So we met the following day in town. That is when there was, KCB and S&L. So we met and we agreed the house would be 3.9 million. That is the amount I spent, which is the current Komarock Modern HealthCare in Komarock, which has 24 beds. Of course, with the dental unit, X-ray, we have theaters there. But it was actually a residential building, which there was because it's a corner, so there was quite a huge space, which I converted and built the current Komarock Modern HealthCare in Komarock, which has 24 beds with, those other facilities, dental unit, we have ultrasound, X-ray, a theater, and that is what has actually, that has made the organization to grow. Of course, that was the year 2009. We went to the new building on 28th November 2009. Now, of course, again, 24 beds, those were very few. The Somali community and the other clients, and of course, now, again, the number grew, and that way, I had to look for a space, because sometimes you would have clients you want to admit, you tell them the hospital is full, and I tell you, it's okay, I will stay at the reception until when there's a space. I'm not going to any other place. And that way, then I had to look for a solution. And I had to check around where I can have some good space. And that's how I came to Talawa, bought the first plot here in the year 2009. That was costing 900,000. Currently, it would cost you around 11 million or so. Now, when I bought that was a quarter of an acre, and I felt that was not enough. So I had to sweet talk the people who had land around here, and then I got some land next to the quarter, which was like another acre. So that acre plus then the quarter that I bought now formed, some good space, and I decided to build the hospital. That time, of course, because I'd already bought the land and a few other things, by the time I was doing groundbreaking in Utawala, my account was negative 300,000 because I'd bought, the land and other things, but I did the groundbreaking. And I keep telling people I come from Tharaka, not Meru, Tharaka Nidhi, that part of Tharaka which is bordering Mwingi, which is very dry. And I went to school with a lot of difficulties. Most of my school fees was paid by the Catholic Church. My sister called Sister Elvin. She used to pay my school fees in high school and when I was doing my medicine. And I decided I have to give back to the community. Now, the only way I could give back to the community is actually by doing something for them that is along my line. And that's how I decided to do the current Komarock Modern HealthCare in Kadwana. My main reason actually of doing Kadwana branch is like a CSR, to give back to the community. When an old lady goes there, pays 500 shillings, I feel like someone who has paid 1 million shillings. And that old woman would leave that place saying, ule kijana amefanya hii hospitali, Mungu ambariki. And my intention there is to make sure people around there or around that region in the county and the surrounding county are able to get the same services that they are able to get in Nairobi. When I go to Kadwana and find people coming to be treated and are happy and they leave the hospital contented and get the same services they will get in Nairobi, that fulfillment alone is enough